I'm your host, Sal Mercoglano. Welcome to this episode of What's Going On with Shipping. So the other day, I got a little bit maybe carried away and bemoaning the Department of Defense announcement concerning the closure of the Red Hill fuel facility in Hawaii. No, I didn't get carried away at all. I was completely rational. It's one of the best videos I ever did. I'm sorry. This statement by the Department of Defense was ludicrous on multiple levels. But I also realized that I bemoaned what the DoD was doing. Let me be clear again. Should have closed the facility a long time ago. Should have been doing repairs, not allowing fuel oil to leak into the water that people drink and use on a daily basis. Absolutely, again, criminal. But I realized I sat there and bemoaned the Navy and the Department of Defense without coming up with a solution. So I'm going to give you a couple of alternatives that the Navy and the military should be looking at for solutions over the closure of the Red Hill facility. This is the statement of Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin that got me all ramped up the other day. And this passage right here was the key one. He talks about in here the distributed and dynamic nature of our force posture in the Indo-Pacific, the sophisticated threats we face, and the technology available to us demand an equally advanced and resilient fueling capacity. To a large degree, we already avail ourselves of dispersed fueling at sea and ashore, permanent rotational. We will now expand and accelerate the strategic distribution. All right. I talked about the word jumble that is, but let's talk about one key thing here. A key phrase the military likes to use is distributed lethality, the idea that you spread your combat capabilities across multiple platforms. All right. What they're talking about here is distributed fuel. How do you do distributed fuel? You had 250 million gallons of fuel in a facility underground in Hawaii, and now you're going to lose it. Now, let's be clear. That's not all the fuel that's in Hawaii. There's Barbers Point. There's a few other facilities there. But 250 million gallons is substantial. I'm talking about a lot of fuel right there. To give you an idea, one of the 15 Navy oilers, Kaiser-class oilers, can carry about 6 to 7 million gallons of fuel. You have 250 million in the Red Hill facility. So what do you do when you shut down Red Hill and now you're going to lose this capability by May? I don't think, and maybe I don't know, I'm not in the Department of Defense anymore, but I don't think they're set up to replace that. So here are some quick ways you can do it. Number one, go charter yourself a super tanker, not just any super tanker, right here, the Alaskan Frontier. Alaskan Frontier is one of 4 Alaska-class VLCCs, very large crude carriers. 3 of them are in operation right now, moving fuel out of Valdez, Alaska, down to the United States. The Alaskan Frontier has been laid up since 2018 over in the Far East. She's American flagged. She's an Alaska-class tanker. Understand, this is the same exact class as the ESB, the Expeditionary Support Base, and the Expeditionary Support Dock. These are ships that are currently operated by Military Sealift Command for the U.S. Navy. This ship is just sitting there in the Far East right now. She can carry 50 million gallons of fuel. That is 1/5 of the capability of Red Hill. 1/5. You can handle 1/5. She's not being used right now. I know she's available because I've talked to people. She's available right now. The Military Sealift Command, through a commercial operator, OSG, Crowley, one of the companies that operate tankers for the United States, you can go grab that tanker right now, bring her to Hawaii, load her with 1/5 of the fuel, and sit her off at Anchorage. And more importantly, she's mobile. You can move her around, and she could underway replenish other vessels if necessary, if you set up rigs on her or set her up to receive rigs from larger vessels or oilers. This is a capability that's out there right now. So there's alternative number one. Alternative number two. So the appropriations bill that just came out of Congress funded what's called the what's going to be called the Tanker Security Program, the TSP. It's kind of a version of the Maritime Security Program. The idea is to put 10 tankers into this Tanker Security Program, and they'll receive a stipend from the U.S. government, a subsidy, and be allowed to operate. Okay, that's great. That's good. That's going through Congress right now. But there are tankers in the U.S. fleet right now. There are 2 large companies that operate tankers for the U.S. There's others, but there's 2 large ones. OSG, the Overseas Shipping Group, and then Crowley Maritime. These two companies operate Jones Act tankers. These are tankers that are in the coastwise trade around the United States. All the United States is not serviced by pipelines. And so oil has to be moved from drill platforms and facilities where they're stored to refineries. And both OSG and Crowley operate these vessels. These vessels are not the ones really targeted for the vessel tanker agreement or the vessels, the tanker security program, excuse me. That's what this is here in the Federal Register that they're talking about, this voluntary tanker agreement. What you can do if you're the US government, more importantly, if you're the Maritime Administration, your Military Sea Lift Command, and you are the Transportation Command, you can make an agreement so that when these ships are not in use, what happens is OSG and Crowley, when their tankers aren't in use, when the tanker industry bottoms out, they lay them up into a cold layup. They take the crews off and they put the vessels into a cold layup. If you establish a reduced operating status akin to what happens with the MARAD's Ready Reserve Force, these ships can slip into a reserved operating status, or better yet, fall under charter to the US government, and they can store fuel where needed by DOD until they're needed commercially. They can be preloaded, ready to go, ready to load if need be. Now, these would have to be clean tankers because you would want to carry DFM or JP5, not crude oil. But still, there are commercial tankers that are available out there from the US fleet that we should be thinking about laying into programs like this. All right. Third, we have new oilers being built. The John Lewis class of oilers are being built right now, which means the Henry J. Kaisers, the existing class of 15 oilers, are about to go away. There's already plans for them to be cycled out. The first one, the Henry J. Kaiser, was built back in 1985. The last of them came in the 1990s. We should discuss the potential for keeping some of those in reduced operating status or using them as transport oilers, perhaps contracting them out to civilian companies so that they can operate them, keep the rigs on board, remove the material. So you take on the wires and the hoses, maybe leave one or two in standby mode so it can be used in case we needed, but these can be used as transport oilers so that if war should happen, you can basically run them up. This is exactly what the US Navy did back in the 1950s when we got out of World War II. We were using what we call transport oilers instead of TTAC AOs. They were TDAC AOTs, and they can be used to replenish. And in case of war, they then can be put back into service. So that plan can be used. That's number three. Number four, the ESBs I talked about before, the Alaska class ESBs, which are now ships like the Lewis B. Puller. We are building these vessels. These vessels are modified tankers. So we removed a large area of the tank capacity right here, but there's still tank capacity below the waterline, which is just full with water. These ships have to ballast ridiculous amounts to get them down to their loading marks. Instead of loading water, put fuel in them. Change the system out and put fuel in them so that they can be mobile refueling facilities. Maybe not be able to do underway replenishment. They're really big and it'd be really difficult to do it, but maybe import refueling capability so that if a ship comes alongside, throw some Yokohama fenders over and you can replenish them. There's even talk with the ESDs, the Expeditionary Support Dock. Two of these vessels were built. These are also modified Alaska class, the Montford Point and the John Glenn. John Glenn isn't even being used anymore. Matter of fact, she just left her lay berth in San Francisco and just arrived off of Long Beach. I'm not sure what she's doing right now, but if they're talking about getting rid of this vessel, this is an Alaska class. It is the same type of vessel as the Alaskan Frontier. This vessel can be used for your distributed fuel concept. You can basically go out there and use them for that. That's a concept. I'm losing track of my concepts now, but I think that's concept number four. Concept number five, build and charter. How did we have tankers in the US fleet prior to this? One of the things that the US implemented back in the 1950s, right after when we realized the World War II tankers were going to phase out, and plus they were small and we needed new ones, they did a program called build and charter. where they would contract with companies to build ships specifically for the US government and then operate on a set charter for a set period of time. This is the last of the T5 tankers. This is the last of the tankers that were done under that program. She went out of service in 2019. These 5 T5s were known as the Champion class, were built and then chartered for 4 5-year periods. And these vessels were instrumental in distributing fuel. You also see the ship was fitted with 2 underway replenishment rigs. You'll see the rigs are not there. You don't have the wires and the hoses right there, but they're stored on board. And in case you needed underway replenishment, you can fly out a Navy team. They come on board, operate the rigs, and therefore you can basically run the vessel as a mini oiler to support the fleet. NASSCO has built tankers, the SEACOR ECOs and the APT ECOs. These are vessels about twice the size of a Kaiser class oiler. They can carry quite a bit more fuel than what is carried on board a Kaiser class. 2 of these are under contract to Military Sealift Command right now, the Empire State and the Evergreen State. Well, more of these should be looked at, and more importantly, we should be building these. We should be building these. Part of this distributed fuel has to be mobile bases that we can use. I'm going to be posting my video soon on the talk I gave on early World War II logistics. And that is the lesson we learned. We needed basically mobile tankers to not just replenishment the ships, but we also needed to be able to send tankers to anchorages to replenish the oilers that were replenishing the fast carriers and the task force, and also to be waypoint stations for ships coming by. There are many alternatives that the Department of Defense should be looking at. I just gave 5 of them right there. And I guarantee you someone's going to steal this and make a huge amount of money on this and contract this out. And I'm going to be screwed, but that's fine. That's not my goal here. I would love to make money. I'd really like to make money, but I'm also worried about the plan and strategy that the US has implemented here, because I don't think they really thought through the closure of Red Hill. So anyway, forward this over to Transportation Command, US Navy, Department of Defense, Secretary Austin. Hi, Secretary Austin. Forward it over, give them some ideas, and let's see if we can make something positive come out of Red Hill's closure here, beyond the fact that they should have closed it years ago and been doing inspections and preventing this contamination, poisoning of people in Hawaii. But again, as terrible as that is, we have to look at the bigger issue there too, which is we don't lose the ability to replenish and sustain our fleet and our military forces across the vastness of the Pacific. Hawaii is still essential, and you still need it as a forward base. All right, that's my video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please subscribe, hit the bell to be alerted about new videos, leave a comment, give it a thumbs up, share it across social media. And if you can, because again, I'm not a government contractor, because someone's going to make money off this deal. I'm not. Become a Patreon, support the page. I appreciate it. It allows me to put these videos out. Until our next video, Sal, signing off.